Good morning everyone and happy February. This is going to be my wrap up of my January reads. I've read 25 books in January. Let's go. First of all, I read Devil's Cup by Georgette, which is a sequel to These All Shades by Georgette. Georgette is one of my absolute favourite writers. She's a historical romance writer. These two are actually set in the Georgian era, although she writes mostly in the Regency era. So Devil's Cup is a sequel to These All Shades. In These All Shades, you meet the Duke of Avon, who is very aloof, very cold, and Leonie, who is a French, stubborn, headstrong, very passionate girl, and they fall in love. And in the Devil's Cup, actually, it's the story of their son, the Marquis of Vidal, who is as much of a rake as his father. And he's had such an ultimatum actually after a gambling evening gone wrong. His father, Duke of Avon, who has reformed, tells him that he needs to reform his ways or else. And the Marquis of Vidal, the hero of this book, actually chooses else. So he decides to elope to France with Sophie, who is interested in his title but not much else. And yes, except that on the last minute, actually, his missive to Sophie telling her that he's going to elope with her, that they're going to go, is intercepted by her sister Mary. And Mary, a very plucky, very brave, very courageous, very lovely girl, takes her place. So she takes a mask, she grabs a mask, and she pretends to be Sophie to save her sister from ruin. And so she kind of goes with him. And that's the entire story. It's wonderful. I loved it so much. I give it 5 stars. It's so funny actually. The entire book, you've got this absolutely rake of a being who just I don't like rakes, so spare me your rakish ways, spare me your tale of rakish rows. But it's a lot like that in the first part of the book before he meets Mary, and then Mary joins him, and she's, to me at least, the heart of the book. And I think Georgette struggles, I'm going to talk about that later, but Georgette really struggles with imbalance in her couple sometimes. So you can always almost tell who she wanted to write, and who amongst the characters she wanted to write, and who is going to be the romantic interest. You can't tell that here actually, because both of them are really interesting. So yes, that they are completely, I think, really well matched. They go to France, a lot happens there. Mary, again, is a very brave young girl. She's a very down-to-earth young lady as well, and she's completely devoted to the happiness of her sister, and she's completely devoted to her own happiness as well. A lot of characters want to save them from this impossible situation, but they realise that they're both in love with each other. There are a lot of scenes in this which are just so hair and also so over the top and wonderful. I laughed so much. I cried, I laughed. It was wonderful. It was just absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favourite books and one of my favourite hairs for sure. So Devil's Cup. So after this, actually, I realised that maybe I should reread These All Shades, because These All Shades, being the first book, I gave 3 stars to last year. I hated it. The Duke of Avon is horrible. I hated him. And Leonie is wonderful, and that's the imbalance once again. So Leonie is absolutely wonderful, and she features heavily in Devil's Cup, so I missed her, and I realised that I needed to reread These All Shades just in case I was mistaken about the 3 stars. So following Devil's Cup, I reread These All Shades, which I read last year for the first time, and it was way better than I remembered. In These All Shades, the Duke of Avon purchases a page called Leon, only to realise later that he's actually a girl called Leonie, and Leonie is devoted, absolutely slavishly devoted to him, because he saved her from a miserable life really. And there are a lot of secrets also around her identity and around her parentage, I should say. And this is kind of a revenge tale really, and These All Shades has got a lot of adventure, and I think the most explosive and the most scandal-filled ending in Hare, at least that I've read so far. And it's a very good ending actually, but it's a very much of an adventure story, especially because of the revenge tale part. I love Leonie so much, so much, and it's really a Leonie book. So if you read it like that, through this lens, it ended up being a 4-star for me. So yeah, so I read Devil's Cup, reread These All Shades, and reappraised my review of These All Shades as well. And then I read a couple of books which made me feel, I wanted to feel, January was really winter, we had a snowstorm, at some point we were snowed in, and January I really wanted to feel the cold, and I really wanted to be snowed in my literature as well. So I read a few books which I thought would have a good snowy atmosphere and a good wintry atmosphere, mostly fantasy. So first was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I read a few of the Temeraire books when they were released, way back when, and I had never read Spinning Silver. That was completely new to me. And Spinning Silver is about Miriam, who comes from a family of moneylenders, except that her dad is very bad at his job. He's too kind, and so people do not give him the money back that they owe. And so one day she decides to take it upon herself to ask for their money, because on the verge of poverty, they can't make ends meet anymore. So she goes and becomes a moneylender amongst her community, and she gains a reputation as being someone who can change silver into gold. And a lot happens in this, and what I loved most about this book, I think, is that the heroine is definitely Miriam, and she comes from a very loving family. That was unexpected. The way that she loves her family and the way that her family loves her back made me almost cry. Honestly, they were so beautiful. Their bond was just so beautiful. And I think the special feeling of this book comes from the narration. The writing is unusual in that it's about Miriam, so it's from Miriam's point of view. However, you pick up two more points of view as the story goes on, when Miriam meets different characters. So in the end, you've got three main heroines of this book, and the story is split between the three as their lives intersect and intertwine, and they've got their own path and journey as well. So they help each other, and they come into each other's way as well. So three heroines. So it really ends up being the story of Miriam, Wanda, and Irina. And all three of them have got to deal with magic and a never-ending winter, really, pretty much. So I didn't love this book to the point of giving it 5 stars. I know that it could be a 5 star for many people. I could see it being an absolute favourite for many people. The one thing that prevented me from doing that was the violence, of course. It's a very violent book. There's a lot of disturbing imagery. Wanda, especially in her story, there is a lot of graphic violence as well. The sibling bonds, the female friendship, the family bonds are impeccable, honestly, absolutely gorgeous. I just couldn't give it 5 stars because it was just too violent for me. But this is a gorgeous book, and I highly recommend it, especially if you want to be wrapped in winter, so to speak. So I loved Spinning Silver. It's just not a 5 star for me, so 4 stars. Next, I reread Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier. I have talked about this on this channel before, but Juliet Marillier used to be one of my absolute favourite writers growing up. I read a lot of her when I was a teen, and I wanted to revisit her last year and this year. And I started with the Seven Waters books, which are books set in Ireland in the medieval ages, about druids, mostly forest spells, enchantments. It's got 1 heroine per book, and I absolutely adore Daughter of the Forest, which is the first one, and it's one of my absolute favorite books ever, even though it is very intense, and her books are very intense. Then I read Shadowfell, the entire Shadowfell trilogy, which is even more intense, even more violent, about a young girl who's got unusual powers, and she can help this rebellion overthrow the government. And I read Heart's Blood next by Juliet Marillier. This took me weeks to complete, actually, because it was so violent. And despite its being the premise, and again, January was a hard month for me in terms of reading, because I couldn't seem to read light books, which I prefer. I seem to always start and finish a very heavy books, and that was a lot for me. That was too much for me, I think. It was just a series of heavy books, and to me, someone who really lives for light, fun easy books to read. It was a lot, and Heartspots was definitely part of that. I almost came to a reading slump because of this book. Anyways, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling in which the heroine, Caitlin, is a scribe in a world where writing and reading is a bit of a luxury. And she's a scribe. She escapes her town because of circumstances. So she's being chased. She escapes her town and she comes to the dwelling of Whistling Tor. And Whistling Tor is in the heart of a forest, a very evil forest, and Whistling Tor has got a ruler called Enruin, who is a bit of a mystery as well. He has been disabled since childhood, and he's a curmudgeon for sure. He's very he's full of secrets. He's the ruler of Whistling Tor, but he needs a scribe, and she needs somewhere to go. She needs shelter. So they come to an arrangement. She becomes his scribe, and secrets are revealed, especially surrounding his past and magic happening in his past. This was extremely violent. Please look up the content warnings for this one. The heroine is completely fine. There is a happy ending, but to get there takes a lot, and emotionally it was very disturbing. There are scenes of torture and all sorts of things in this. It was hard to read. I'm glad I completed it, but it was hard to read. I can't believe that I enjoyed these books, all of her books actually, so much as a teen, because in my reviews back then, there is no mention of violence at all. So I think I've just changed as I've grown. Really, I've changed, and my threshold for violence has changed very, very much. I didn't used to be bothered by it, and I see it everywhere now, and it's a lot. Honestly, it's a lot. So yeah, proceed with caution. Yeah, proceed with caution, especially with this one, which I think is it was very disturbing to me, honestly. Next, The Bookshop, the Draper and the Candlestick Maker, A History of the High Street by Annie Gray. This was amazing. This was a non-fiction. This was a social history book about, again, the history of the high street. So all of the shops you can think of and how they became what they are today, what we know of them today, how they were created, why, how they evolved, and what they are today. So it's about department stores, it's about Selfridges, the birth of Marks and Spencer, I don't know, tallow and beeswax, and yes, all sorts of things, and goods and market days, and where people went to buy their foods, how food was transformed, how a butcher was so important in the high street, for example, how meat was stored, that sort of thing. All sorts of things you can think of, all of the shops you can think of in one book, and their creation, how they evolved, the guiles, rules around the creations as well, how bustling the high streets used to be and where they're going next. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend actually the audiobook for this, because the author, Annie Gray, reads it herself, and she does it with such gusto. Every single chapter focuses on a different profession and on a different shop, and toy makers, all sorts of things, and on different shop. And she has got a quote at the beginning of each chapter, which most often is hilarious, and she reads those with absolute gusto, coming from shopkeepers, and she brings out the voices and etc. And she's a great narrator. Honestly, she adds a lot to the book. I think that was a marvelous book. I could have read 5 volumes of this, honestly, without being bored. It was exactly what I liked. Endless lists of things you can find in shops, draperies, clothing, gloves, all sorts of things, even tea shops as well, tea rooms. It was wonderful, honestly wonderful. It made me want to read so much more, because I know that there are books dedicated to shops in particular. So individual shops have books up there with people who, you know, dove into the story of, I don't know, candle makers or booksellers and that sort of thing, and book binding. So yeah, I was absolutely riveted throughout. Honestly, it's such a good book, so interesting. Next, I read Ripper Man by Pratchett, which is the second book in the Death Arc in his Discworld series, which has got many books. And the Death Arc has got, I think, 4 or 5 books. So I'm focusing on that at the moment. I have read Maud multiple times, and I think this was a reread, but I couldn't remember anything about it. So I treated it as a new read. And Ripper Man is about, like most of Pratchett really, is about very very philosophical things under the guise of humor. So he's a very, very funny writer, and he talks about very important things, but very down to earth, in a very down to earth way, which I think makes him so appealing. So Ripper Man is about Death, who one day finds out that they are going to die soon, and they want to live a little. So they ignore their duties as Death, and people who die just hang around, I suppose, with nothing to do and with unexpected added time. And this undead, one of these undead people is Whittle, a wizard who doesn't know what to do with his time, and Death is actually in the fields or talking to workers and having a grand old time. This is really, really funny and also very wise, like all of Pratchett really. The plot of Pratchett's books is sometimes hard to see, but it's mostly a collection of very funny scenes, and you care for the characters so much by the end. They are so endearing and so precious, and you want the best for them. And I think Ripper Man is just exactly that, honestly. This was a 5-star, this was a 4-star for me, sorry, because I think the plot was just a bit less tight than in Mort, which is the first book in the Death Arc series, but all of Pratchett is good, so highly recommend. Next up, I read Death in the Clouds by Agatha Christie, which is so convoluted. This actually, the premises of this is so good. It's a death occurring on a plane, and Poirot becomes one of the suspects because there are so few suspects because it happened on a private plane, and Poirot was just behind, I think, the victim, the murder victim. So he becomes a suspect for a while, and then he decides to take on the investigation and find out for himself what happened. My favorite parts of the book, the solution is so wild, but my favorite parts of this book actually was that Hastings and Poirot investigate in France, and they go to numerous shops, and actually part of the solution is to find out what was in people's bags. And I don't know about you, but the list of what's in people's bags obsessed me. I used to watch so many videos when I was younger. I don't know if people make them anymore, but when I was younger, of what's in my bag videos. Those were so cool to watch. I love finding out what's in people's bags, and finding out, what was in people's bags in the 1930s is a treat, honestly. So many trinkets that you have no idea existed, that you're reminded of, just appear on the page. It was so lovely, honestly, and I love the investigation into the shops and into France as well. So parts of the book were really, really good. I thought the solution and the solution really was weird. One of the characters is actually a young girl who is a hairdresser, and she wins a bit of money at gambling, and she decides to take a holiday, and I thought she was very, very good, very endearing. There was a romance in this book as well, as with a lot of Agatha Christie. This was charming, honestly. I didn't love it, but it was charming. Next up, Madame Will You Talk by Mary Stewart. I love Mary Stewart. This was a new to me book by her, set in Provence, and the heroine actually takes a holiday in Provence with her best friend Louise, and she's at the hotel, and she meets a young boy there who has come from a very who has got a mysterious past, really. So his parents have had a tragic journey already, and he's kind of alone with his stepmother in Provence, and mysterious things happen, and she discovers that not is all as it seems. There are lovely, I can't believe I'm saying this, but she's the one, she's the only one in the world, I think, who can make me feel that way, but there are lovely car chase scenes in this book, between the hero and the heroine. And Mary Stewart has such an economical way of writing. She only tells you what you need to know about the heroine, but she's so endearing anyway, and the romance is just so matter of fact, and of course we're going to get together, of course we're attracted to each other, of course we're going to make our lives together. Everything is just matter of fact, and very these would make wonderful movies, honestly. But yeah, so, and the Provence setting was absolutely wonderful. I think Mary Stewart is the best at literary tourism, so you really do travel a lot with her. I have been to Provence, I have been to Nîmes especially, and this has a scene set in Nîmes as well, which was wonderful, and it gives you really a good taste for the place that you're in. They're so immersive, and I loved it. Honestly, I loved it. I think the adventure parts are not my favorite at all. This had a lot to do with, I mean, I can't tell you, but it's got a lot to do with very high stakes sort of things, which I didn't enjoy as much. But yeah, obviously the literary tourism, the fact that all of her children are curious and generous, and she's the only writer, she's one of the only writers actually who would make me like children fiction. They're not annoying at all. They're very close to heroine a lot of the time, and they form a friendship with the heroine a lot of the time, which makes them so endearing. They're curious, generous again. So yeah, a good book, a really good book by Maze Stewart. Next, Death at a Firefly Tea by Laura Childs, which is book number, I don't know, 20 something in her Tea Shop Mystery series. Oh my god, I loved it. This was a NetGalley arc actually, and I absolutely loved it. This was very unexpected because I haven't had the best of luck with my cozy mysteries recently, and I couldn't find really the will to go on in many of my currently reading because they were not that good. This was very good. This is set in Charleston or South Carolina, and this is about a tea shop owner. And the owner, I think she's called Theodosia, which is so fun actually. It's a name that I absolutely adore. And I know that there's a Theodosia middle grade detective girl story of books, which I've been dying to read for many years. I think the first one is called Theodosia and the Serpent of Chaos. She's the daughter of a museum curator, and she can see, I think, curses, and it's got to do with Egyptology. It sounds so good. But anyway, the heroine is called Theodosia, and she's a tea shop owner. She's got a tea room in Charleston. And what I love about mysteries, especially cozy mysteries and historical mysteries as well, is that they can take you into a whole new world, so a whole hobby. I love tea, and the author loves tea as well. You can tell, because this is very, very packed with details about, for example, she throws a Moulin Rouge themed tea party. She throws a Victorian tea party. There are specific blends of tea which are being served to guests, which are very high end, like Marillier tea. She talks about Plenilune tea, but Marillier was one of my favorites, and Marco Polo, which is also one of my favorites. Seeing my favorite teas, which are, I think, a bit niche, in a book is surreal. And it's got a tea sommelier as well at the tea shop. So her inclusivity when it comes to tea and her mastery of her subject, I think, makes this book what it is. It's so good. And it's got so many scenes about again, so the tea making process, blending teas. At some point the heroine is in an antique bookshop, and she finds a book that she's been tracking for a long time about a man's tea journeys, so all the trips he made for tea. And I thought, oh my god, this is brilliant, and this is a book that I now want to read. And it's rare in a cozy mystery actually, this level of detail and this level of impact on the reader as well, making you want to read more books because they're mentioned in the book that you're reading. I think it's rare in cozy mystery, and I absolutely loved it. I want to read this series so much now. I want to read all of the books in the series. There are many, and yeah, this was absolutely wonderful. Honestly, if you're looking for a new cozy mystery series to read, I think Death at a Firefly Tea, which is part of the Tea Shop Mystery series by Laura Childs, is definitely the way to go. I loved it. Okay, Enna Burning by Shannon Hale was next. So Enna Burning is the second book in the Books of Bayern series by Shannon Hale. And Shannon Hale is actually, I read a lot of her books, a lot of her fairy tale books, I should say, when I was a teen as well. So she, at the same time as Juliet Marillier actually. So I'm revisiting the books I used to absolutely love, just in case, just to see my reaction to them now. So it's been a journey. So Enna Burning's second book is in the Books of Bayern series. The Goose Girl, the first book, is one of my favourite books ever. Just like Daughter of the Forest, really, in the Seven Water series, stands on its own and it's perfect. I think Goose Girl is really perfect. It's got disturbing, look up the content warnings for this one. However, Enna Burning is a step further in violence. It is so disturbing. It's about Enna, who is one of my absolute favourite female characters ever. She's a very feisty young woman. And she's Izzy's, the main character from the first book, she's Izzy's best friend. And Enna has got all of the characters in this series actually have got a gift, have got a magical gift, an ability to speak with one of the elements. And Enna can speak with fire. She has got fire speaking. It's a very dangerous, very hard to control power, and she's got to find out how to control her power throughout the course of the book. There is very violent and disturbing imagery in this. There is a death which is so disturbing at the beginning of the book. And there is manipulation also in this book as well. There is a very horrible relationship in this book, and then she finds love and finds a very healthy romance. There is war as well. It's a lot, especially for young adults, which at the time was marketed as young adult book. What saves this book, actually, in the next books in the series as well, because I completed the series, there are 4 books, is that I think the female friendships are unparalleled and absolutely beautiful. The way they find a way to help each other, not just through life, but also through using their powers, and the magic involved and the balance involved is so beautiful. They find a way together, and that's what makes this series so worth it for me. So I read Goose Girl last year. I read Enna Burning this month. I also read River Secrets, which is about Ratzo. Ratzo is one of the male characters, actually, of the series, and he is a bit of overlooked, I suppose. He's a bit overlooked by all of his siblings. He's got many siblings, and he's a bit overlooked until he finds his own strength, and people show him what he's good at, and people show him how wonderful he actually is. He hasn't got magical powers, but he's got powers of his own. And River Secrets is about that. Again, it's a war story, although this one is a bit of mystery, so it's a bit hard, it's a bit easier, I suppose, to read, as opposed to all of the harrowing tales around it. But it wasn't a favourite, but I love the character. I love Ratzo so much. And Forest Born is the 4th one, and it's about Ratzo's sister Rin, who has got the most dangerous power of them all, I think. And she finds a way. So she has always tried to tame this power within her, this strength within her, and to fit into her family and to be what she calls in her mad shadows. But then one day she's offered a place at the Queen's side. She's offered to be a lady in waiting. She goes and she finds a way to accept her powers and to use them for good. And again, the female friendships in this book and in all of these books is absolutely wonderful. The heroine of the first book, Izzy, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she's a princess at the beginning of the book and she becomes a queen at the end of the book. And you could end there, but Goose Girl makes her so isolated because she's got friends, but you don't know them that well. And what I think the strength really of the series as a whole, of reading the series as a whole, is that yes, they are violent. Yes, they are more violent than the first book. No, they are not as good, I think, as fleshed out, as fairy tale like, I suppose, as the first book, which is based on a fairy tale. But she acquires friends and she acquires a power and a friendship which is beyond anything that she has in the first book. So I think for that alone, they're worth reading. All of them are worth reading as a whole, especially since the ending is so rewarding, and you see characters actually make a comeback. Good and bad characters make a comeback, which was so unexpected and such a twist. I think it's a very good loyalty reward, actually, when you have that, when you've got a series and you've got just kind of Easter eggs thrown in for the reader who has been paying attention. And I think that does that really well. And again, just the female friendship of this book is just so precious, honestly, and it takes place in a kingdom where it's very much about ruling, what makes a good ruler. And I think it's unusual in this way, in that it focuses so much on that. It's not just the ending, it's not just marrying the prince and becoming a prince and becoming a queen. It's also about how to rule afterwards. So I think it's unusual in that way and very interesting. I read a few Dorothy Sayers books. Who's Body was first. I read Who's Body this year, which is about Lord Peter Wimsey, who is kind of a blend between Bertie Wooster and Fred Astaire. Dorothy Sayers, I think, said that about him. and in whose body he's very much a Betty Wooster type of character. It's the first book in the series, and she has, you can see her evolution. Actually, I've read these before, all of them, and this is the first book. It's not the best. You should start with it maybe, but it's not the best, so please go on. But Lord Peter makes his first appearance in his book with his valet Bunter, and he's an amateur detective. He's an aristocrat and he's an amateur detective. The dialogue and humour in her books are, I think, unmatched in Golden Age detective fiction. She's the best one for that. And in the first book, he is called because someone has found a body in a bath, and the body looks like a very famous financier. So he investigates that. The strength of whose body to me is that it's dialogue. Honestly, it's dialogue, it's the humour, it's Lord Peter and Bunter, and the world that it actually brings to life. Yeah, the second book in the series, Clouds of Witness, is about Lord Peter's brother, who is a duke, and he's embroiled in an investigation because a corpse was found on his property, and he was nearby, and so he's pretty much the main suspect. And his their sister Mary, I suppose, was engaged to the man who died. So it's a very family affair, and you meet Lord Peter's family in this book, in Clouds of Witness, as he investigates what happened. And the problem is that neither Mary nor his brother want to speak about anything that happened, so it makes the investigation very difficult. What I did this time around, because I have read these books before and I always try to find the way to make my reading and understanding of the books a bit deeper and richer, is that I read the books, and whenever I could find an adaptation of the books, I watched the adaptation of the book straight away. So Whose Body has not got an adaptation, however Clouds of Witness has got one, and it introduces Ian Carmichael as Lord Peter. Now this, I think it was the BBC. This BBC production is so weird. It was made in the 70s with Ian Carmichael, and then they picked up a few more books with a few more books with Lord Peter and Harriet Vane, who is my favourite character in this series. And they made in the 80s a few more books. They adapted in a few more books in the 80s, starring Edward Petheridge and Harriet Walter, who is divine. I personally watched the Edward Petheridge episodes first because these are my favourite books in the series. And I watched the Ian Carmichael for the first time after reading Clouds of Witness. So I read Clouds of Witness and I watched the adaptation of Clouds of Witness starring Ian Carmichael after having watched Edward Petheridge. I personally think that Ian Carmichael embodies the Bertie Wooster side of Lord Peter, and Edward Petheridge embodies the Fred Astaire part of Peter. My favourite portrayal, how I imagine Lord Peter to be, is more Edward Petheridge. I can understand what Ian Carmichael is doing. It's not my favourite portrayal. It's a very personal opinion. I know that a lot of people love him, and I'm not, it's fine. But yes, it was a little bit, it's not how I personally imagine the character to be. I think he changes also in the series, so it's a bit harder. I think he starts out as a Betty Wooster, in a sense. Ian Carmichael's portrayal is dead on, but yeah, that was my personal, and I'm going to continue doing that actually. I'm going to read the rest of the books in the series, and each time I'm going to watch the adaptation afterwards. That was great actually. I watched that on the treadmill at the gym, and it was amazing to have that. Next up, I read At Bertram's Hotel by Agatha Christie, so another Agatha Christie, and I loved it so much more than Death in the Clouds. At Bertram's Hotel is a Miss Marple book, and it's not the best Miss Marple because she barely makes an appearance, but it's so memorable to me because Miss Marple, who has been going on in age, has been reminiscing about her childhood and her youth a lot in those books, in the last few books. And in A Bertram's Hotel, she actually stays at one of the hotels that she knew from her youth, Bertram's Hotel, and sees how it has changed. And like in all books featuring a hotel, it's got many guests and it's full of intrigue, and you see many things happening in the hotel. I loved this book because it's got wonderful little descriptions of Miss Marple and the hotel and what luxury is really all about. So I wanted to read it to you. I wanted to read a few passages to you because I think they are just absolutely wonderful. So, and they really show you what's, I didn't love the book. It's not a 5-star, but there are many 5-star passages. So first off is Bess Sedgwick, who is a character in this book. And like with several actually Miss Marple books and Poirot books, Christie is very good at introducing, I've talked about this before, but larger than life female characters you are going to remember, who stand out in society, who are paragons of female, I suppose, female elegance and female, I don't know, career-focused women, I suppose. Okay, so Bess Sedgwick, here is her portrayal in the book. But Bess Sedgwick was different. Bess Sedgwick was a name that almost everyone in England knew. For over 30 years now, Bess Sedgwick had been reported by the press as doing this or that outrageous or extraordinary thing. For a good part of the war, she had been a member of the French resistance and was said to have 6 notches on her gun representing dead Germans. She had flown solo across the Atlantic years ago, had ridden on horseback across Europe, and fetched up at Lake Van. She had driven racing cars, had once saved 2 children from a burning house, had several marriages to her credit and discredit, and was said to be the second best dressed woman in Europe. It was also said that she had successfully smuggled herself aboard a nuclear submarine on its test voyage. It was therefore with the most intense interest that Miss Marple sat up and indulged in a frankly avid stare. Whatever she had expected at Bertram's hotel, it was not to find Bess Sedgwick there. An expensive nightclub or Lloyd Driver's lunch counter, either of those would be quite in keeping with Bess Sedgwick's wide range of interests, but this highly respectable and all-well or hostelry seemed strangely alien. Still, there she was, no doubt of it. Hardly a month passed without Bess Sedgwick's face appearing in the fashion magazines or the popular press. Here she was in the flesh, smoking a cigarette in a quick, impatient manner, and looking in a surprised way at the large tea tray in front of her, as though she had never seen one before. She had ordered. Miss Marple screwed up her eyes and peered. It was rather far away. Yes, donuts. Very interesting. So this is her portrayal, which I think is marvellous. Also, Miss Marple actually has got little scenes in this book, which I think is just so wonderful. For example, this room service breakfast scene, which shows that Miss Marple is expecting things to be a certain way, is expecting things to not have changed since her youth. They have, but certain things, especially Bertram's hotel, hasn't changed, and she's very grateful for that they have stayed the same, they have stayed proper, and she's very good about that. So here it is. Miss Marple examined the instructions given by the hotel, splendid big prints that it wasn't necessary to put one's spectacles on. Meals could be ordered through the telephone by asking for room service, or you could press a bell labelled chambermaid. Miss Marple did the latter. Talking to room service always flustered her. The result was excellent. In no time at all, there was a tap on the door, and a highly satisfactory chambermaid appeared. A real chambermaid, looking unreal, wearing a striped lavender print dress and actually a cap, a freshly laundered cap, a smiling, rosy, positively countrified face. Where did they find these people? Miss Marple ordered her breakfast: tea, poached eggs, fresh rolls. So adept was the chambermaid that she did not even mention cereals or orange juice. 5 minutes later, breakfast came. A comfortable tray with a big pot-bellied teapot, creamy-looking milk, a silver hot water jug, 2 beautifully poached eggs on toast, poached the proper way, not little round hard bullets shaped in tin cups, a good-sized round of butter, stamped with a thistle, marmalade, honey, and strawberry jam, delicious-looking rolls, the hard kind with papery interiors. They smelled of fresh bread, the most delicious smell in the world. There were also an apple, a pear, and a banana. Miss Marple inserted a knife gingerly, but with confidence. She was not disappointed. Rich, deep yellow oat oozed out, thick and creamy, proper eggs, everything piping hot, a real breakfast. She could have cooked it herself, but she hadn't had to. It was brought to her, as if, no, not as though she were a queen, as though she were a middle-aged lady staying in a good but not unduly expensive hotel. And last but not least, I just wanted to read to you one last scene from at Bertram's Hotel, which again was not a favourite book, but it's got so many gorgeous scenes about just Miss Marple reminiscing about Georgian days, really, in the 1930s. I thought it was just so marvellous. This one is about shopping. Miss Marple had a very enjoyable time at Robinson and Cleaver's. Besides purchasing expensive but delicious sheets, she loved the linen sheets for their texture and their coolness. She also indulged in the purchase of good quality red-bordered glass cloth. Really, the difficulty in getting proper glass cloth nowadays. Instead, you were offered things that might as well have been ornamental tablecloth, decorated with radishes, lobster, or the Tour Eiffel or Trafalgar Square, or else littered with lemons and oranges. Having given her dress at St. Mary Mead, Miss Marple found a convenient bus which took her to the Army and Navy stores. The Army and Navy stores had been a haunt of Miss Marple's had been a haunt of Miss Marple's aunt. Had been a haunt of Miss Marple's aunt in days long gone. It was not, of course, quite the same nowadays. Miss Marple cast her thoughts back to Aunt Ellen, seeking out her own special man in the grocery department, settling herself comfortably in the chair, wearing a bonnet and what she had always called her black poplin mantle. Then there would ensue a long hour with nobody in a hurry, and Aunt Helen thinking of every conceivable grocery that could be purchased and stored up for future use. Christmas was provided for, and there was even a far-off look towards Easter. The young Jane had fidgeted somewhat, and had been told to go and look at the glass department by way of amusement. Having finished her purchases, Aunt Helen would then proceed to lengthy inquiries about her chosen shop assistant's mother, wife, second boy, and crippled sister-in-law. Having had a thoroughly pleasant morning, Aunt Helen would say in the playful manner of those times, "And how would the little girl feel about some luncheon?" Whereupon they went up in the lift to the 4th floor and had luncheon, which always finished with a strawberry ice. After that, they bought half a pound of coffee chocolate creams and went to a matinee in a 4-wheeler. Of course, the Army and Navy stores had had a good many facelifts since those days. In fact, it was now quite unrecognisable from the old times. It was gayer and much brighter. Miss Marple, though throwing a kindly and indulgent smile at the past, did not object to the amenities of the present. There was still a restaurant, and there she repaired to order her lunch. Okay. Next, I read The Unknown Ajax by Georgette Hare again. So another Georgette Hare. This one was so different. It was about a lord who lost his son actually recently, and who's next in line to be heir to his large estate is a country bumpkin who is the son of a weaver called Hugo. And Major Hugo, actually, who was distinguished during the war. Major Hugo comes to the estate to take possession of the estate, and he turns out to be the most charming, clever, interesting man whose relations absolutely hate him for taking over the estate over them and passing them over, and things ensue. This is not really a romance novel per se, which is unusual for Georgette Hare actually. It's marketed as a historical romance novel, and I can see that. It's got romance, definitely, but I think it's very much a study in class consciousness, and as much as it is a mistaken identity type of plot, and a comedy of manners, really. So I loved it for what it was. It's not a favourite, but it absolutely warrants a reread. Again, I think you can see the imbalance in the couple here, in that Major Hugo is very much, I think, the writer that Georgette Hare wanted to write about, and he's wonderful. He's very interesting and charming as well. He's so kind. But the heroine is very forgettable, I think, compared to him. So you can see what the imbalance is here. I think you can always tell again who she wanted to write and who is the romantic interest in her books. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And it's got very, again, unusual writing for her, and unusual class consciousness for her as well. And her writing is very different depending on the strata of society that she's writing about, and depending on the character. She's very much, especially in this book, sometimes you can't tell who's speaking. just to talk about spinning silver again, the different points of view actually, the author kind of drops you into a point of view without telling you whose it is. And sometimes I would read a paragraph or two before realizing whose point of view it was. But in this book, in The Unknown Ajax, Georgette Hare has got such a distinct style of writing for each character that you always know who's speaking, even though you don't have their names. So I think it's very good writing, mark of really good writing, I think. Next, I read The Custom of the Country by Edith Wharton. Oh my god. This was obviously a classic of the Gilded Age period. I have read several Edith Wharton. She's a great writer. She's a very tragic writer, actually. All of her books have a horrible, I think, plot and ending, especially for its heroines. You can't help but want to finish the books. They are so riveting. The Custom of the Country is no different. It's about Undine Spragg, who comes from Apex, and she wants to, and she wants everything. She wants the best in the world. She wants the best in the world, and she thinks she thinks she should be given the best in the world. And so her parents are very successful. Her father is a very successful businessman, and so they decide to move to New York. But she's a very selfish brat, spoiled brat, a selfish brat, and she wants the best no matter the cost, and she asks for the best, she demands the best of everybody no matter the cost, and she thinks that the world should be at her feet, provided for her needs, whatever the cost to others. She's a very ruthless kind of character, but I think that Edith Wharton, despite writing a very unlikable heroine, also, and her journey is so fascinating and again riveting, also criticizes very much the society of her time, which gave heroines like that and women like that no other option in the world but to be provided for by men. And I'm going to read a quote to you which I think sums up Undine's personality really well. She had everything she wanted, but she still felt at times that there were other things that she might want if she knew about them. That's Undine. She sets her sight really on the best in society and the best marriage. And her life, she's never satisfied. She's never satisfied. And she leaves a wake of unhappy people, and she leaves unhappy people in her wake. It's very much a tale of climbing the social ladder, no matter the cost. And the ending is brilliant, I think. The ending is absolutely brilliant. The whole book is absolutely brilliant. She travels around the world. She's never satisfied by what she's got. She travels around the world. Everyone tries to keep up with her, to keep her happy. And she always sees something which perhaps would make her happier. And that's her life, really. And the ending is just so, is impeccable, I think. It reminded me in a way of another book I'm going to talk about next, but the ending is just so tragic and so, wow, okay. Of course, this will have this ending. But yeah, I love Edith Wharton. I loved this book. What I find the most interesting about this book actually is my review of it when I was, maybe 16? At 16, I wrote that I could see so much of myself in the heroine and that this book could have been my journal. God, I hope I wasn't that selfish. But yes, I could see that with no other option. I have never expected the best in life, or I've never expected people to bring me the best in life. But yes, when you're young, obviously you want to be rescued and to be a princess and you see all of these possibilities and you think that why not me? Why have I not been picked to live a life of luxury and in the lap of luxury? And her books are very uncomfortable to read, I think, but they're so good. They're so compelling, and the violence is really moral violence and what it does to the characters. I love her so much, and the details in her books, oh my goodness, you never enter a room without knowing what's in it. And she's a very beautiful writer for interiors, and she's an interior decorator in writing. She's a literary interior decorator, if you see what I mean. She decorates her scenes and her rooms with such care. I love her writing so much. I think she's a genius, honestly. and I love the Customer of the Country. Not 5 stars because horrible, but wow. Amazing book, honestly. I'll be thinking about it for a while. Honestly, it was amazing. I read Uprooted by Naomi Novik after Spinning Silver. Uprooted is kind of in the same vein, a little bit, in that it's definitely a fairy tale retelling. It's a retelling of, as much as Spinning Silver was a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, Uprooted has got a bit of a Beauty and the Beast vibes. I wouldn't say it's a retelling, but it's got Beauty and the Beast vibes. The heroine, Agnieszka, lives in a village, and in this village, this village is protected from the horrible, again, woods, by this dragon. The dragon is really a man, they call him a dragon, and the dragon asks for one young woman every once in a while. I think it's every 5 years or so. And so Cassia is being groomed to be the next girl, actually, because he always picks the most unusual, the most beautiful, the most unique girl, actually, who is a certain age. I can't remember what age. But Cassia is not picked. Agnieszka, who is, for all accounts and purposes, very ordinary, is picked by him. And she realizes a little bit later, when she comes to his place, to his castle, why. She has got powers, and he wants to train her to use her powers. This is kind of the premise of the book. This was very violent, much more so to me than Spinning Silver. However, it's got absolutely lovely domestic scenes as well. And I'm going to, if you don't want to be spoiled, I'm going to raise my hand when I'm done talking about spoilers. This is a very minor spoiler, I suppose, but there is a scene in particular which was my favourite scene of the book. I don't know what it says about me, but it was my favourite scene of the book, in which Agnieszka, who again has been taken by this dragon as an offering, really, and she knows that she's never going to see her family again as she is, because it changes people. Actually, spending time with the dragon for several years changes girls irrevocably. So when they come back, they are completely changed. Their family doesn't recognise them, and they can't go back to how they were before. So she knows it's her last chance, really, of seeing her family. And she's got, there are 2 scenes. One is a family meal, and next it's a scene when she's in the castle. So the family meal is not really a spoiler. The air shimmered, and suddenly they had a lovely platter of roast pork, hot and pink and running with juices, my very favourite wheat porridge, cooked thick with a ladleful of melted butter and browned breadcrumbs in the middle, a heap of brand new fresh peas that no one in my village would be eating until spring, and a tegel cake that I had only ever tasted once at the head woman's table, the year that it was my family's turn to be her guests at harvest time. The candied fruits like coloured jewels, the nuts of sweet dough, a perfect golden brown, the hazelnuts small and pale, and all of it glazed and shining with honey syrup. Sorry, it was not a family meal, it was one of the meals that she has at the castle. And another scene at the castle is her finding out that even though she's completely alone with the dragon and terrified, girls have been there before her, and girls have been through this before her, and she finds something which reminds her that she's in fact not alone. There were stores all over, barrels of apples packed in straw, potatoes and carrots and parsnips in sacks, long ropes of onions braided. On a table in the middle of the room, I found a book standing with an lit candle and an inkstand and a quill. And when I opened it, I found a ledger with records of all the stores written in a strong hand. At the bottom of the first page, there was a note written very small. When I lit the candle and bent down to squint, I could just make it out. Breakfast at 8, dinner at 1, supper at 7. Leave the meal laid in the library 5 minutes before. I need not see him, or need to say who, and no need to say who, all the day. Courage! Priceless advice, and that courage was like the touch of a friend's hand. I hugged the book against me, feeling less alone than I had all day. It seemed near midday, and the dragon hadn't eaten at our village, so I set about dinner. I was no great cook, but my mother had kept me at it until I could put together a meal, and I did do all the gathering for my family, so I knew how to tell the fresh from the rotten, and when a piece of fruit would be sweet. I'd never had so many stores to work with. There were even drawers of spices that smelled like midwinter cake, and a whole barrel full of fresh, soft grey salt. I mean, yes, it was a very violent book, but there's also friendship, and there's also absolutely gorgeous foods and gorgeous, there were scenes having to do with, I don't want to spoil, but having to do with magic, which was so beautiful and so unique. So yes, I try to always find, when I finish a book, even though I didn't have the best time, it wasn't as light and playful as I would have liked it to be, I always try to find the best in books and the best parts of the books that I read, and to enrich, to find enrichment in all that I read. So this was my enrichment about Uprooted. You can come back now if you've been gone for the spoilers, which were not really that much. That's spoilery. Next, A Delicious Deception by Lucy Burdette, which was such a disappointment. This was a Key West food critic book. This was an arc by Annette Galley. This was, again, not the first book in the series at all. It's a crazy mystery series set in Key West. I knew nothing about Key West. I would have loved to know something about Key West. You know nothing about Key West after reading this book. The heroine is actually very heavily pregnant. She's 9 months pregnant, and she's asked by the police to assist in custody case. And during the custody case arrangement, someone dies. This was heavy. It was very, very heavy, especially for a 9-month-old pregnant woman. I didn't know what was going on. It wasn't very logical at all, and the plot was heavy, and there was no food whatsoever in this book. The Cozy Mystery series is called the Key West Food Critic Mystery. There was no Key West, and there was no food at all. So very disappointed. I have read a few reviews, and apparently it's a one-off. It's just because she was pregnant and couldn't work really. There was no food. I don't know if there's more Key West in the other books, but apparently there's more food in the other books. So definitely not a priority. Definitely not a tea shop mystery series by Laura Childs kind of love for me. But it is what it is. Murder at Sea by Helen Dixon, same thing. Murder at Sea was a book set in 1938. The heroine Kitty is married to her husband Matt. Matt works in secret intelligence, and she has got a cousin who has been swindled by a man. Both Matt's work in secret intelligence and the swindler are kind of lead them to a ship. So they cruise aboard a ship, an ocean liner. There is very historical context to this. There is hardly any ship at all. I was very excited because I love a cruise ship. I have been on a cruise once in my life. It was wonderful, and I would have loved to read a mystery set on a ship. It wasn't that. It wasn't very good. I don't know the rest of the series is any good. This was once again an arc, and not the first book in the series, so who knows. Next up, I read The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate by Nancy Mitford, and I read them in the complete, I've got them on my Kindle in the complete Penguin edition of all the novels by Nancy Mitford. And it's got an introduction by E.G. Knight, who says that Nancy Mitford is one of her favourite writers because she's so funny, and I agree, and because she has got a very British humour, a mixture of being hilarious and very cruel, and it's exactly what The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate are. Very hysterical, but also very cruel and very disturbing and problematic. I loved them. I laughed so much, but they have got really problematic elements as well. So The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate are narrated by Fanny, who is a bit of an outsider in aristocratic England. Her mother is a bolter, and she is kind of taken in by these aristocratic families in both books. In the first book, she follows the Ratlet family, who is very eccentric, based on the Mitford family, and she follows especially Linda and her many loves and scandals. And it's hilarious. It's got very hilarious scenes of family dynamic, of very humorous things happening. For example, there is a girl who is 8 years old and who is planning her runaway stash. So every time she's been given money, she puts it away to run away one day, which I think is so relatable. And in the second book, she follows Polly, who is a debutante, a gorgeous debutante from India, who is thrown into the marriage market by her aristocratic family, who thinks of nothing but marriage for her, and she's very bored by it. And scandal ensues actually because she makes very unusual, I suppose, choices in her romantic life. And Linda also makes in the first book very unusual choices in her romantic life. But I think what's best in the series actually in this duology, in this in these two books is that Fanny, the narrator, is completely, she's not outside looking in, but she's also so not judgmental. She's not judgmental at all. And this is why the heroines who are much larger than life than her, who are, you know, follow scandal everywhere it goes, confide in her and think of her as their best friend, because she doesn't judge at all. As long as people around her are happy, she's happy. And I think that's really her strength, and she's such a mystery, really. She's sci-fi throughout the two books, but I think that's really her strength, and her underrated strength really lies in that. So I loved those books. I love the humor of those books. I laughed so much. They are such classics. But I also can really understand that they are so problematic. Honestly, the second book in particular, the romance is horrible. The characters are horrible, actually, and I can't imagine. There was something in Atonement which reminded me, actually, well, I suppose that, yeah, it came after, but there was something in Atonement which reminded me of this, actually, in Love in a Cold Climate. So it's yeah, they are classics for a reason. They're really good, but they're also very problematic, but so hilarious. They're the types of book where you laugh, and then you realize that you've laughed, and you're ashamed that you laughed, actually, because it's just so cruel and horrible, but it's also so funny. So yeah, that's Nancy Mitford for you. I've got a few more lined up, actually. The next book in the series, I suppose, following the same characters, is Don't Tell Alfred, which I'm going to read next. I don't think I've read this one before, actually, so it'll be a new experience for me. I'm so looking forward to it. Next, I read Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie. I listened to that on audio, actually. This is about Gwenda. This is a Miss Marple book. It's about Gwenda coming to England for seemingly the first time. She buys a house, and but she keeps having flashbacks of things in the house, even though she has never been there before. And this opens a cold case which happened years ago, having to do with a mystery surrounding her parents, who she has no memory of. This wasn't good at all, actually. This was my least favorite, I think, Miss Marple, because it's a cold case, and all you do throughout the book is just hear people talk about events which happened years and years and years ago, and there aren't that many clues in the present at all, if any. That was so boring to me. Agatha Christie does really fantastic cold cases in other books, but not this one. And this was my least favorite Miss Marple, honestly. However, I read Poirot next, the ABC Murders, and this was one of my favourite Agatha Christie's. So this was a Poirot book, and I missed, after listening to so much Miss Marple this year and last year, I missed Poirot and Hastings. Their banter, their dynamic, the humour of Poirot and Hastings books, absolutely wonderful, and just Poirot books in general, really. And the ABC Murders is wonderful. So it's got Poirot and Hastings, their banter, their humour. It's also got one of the most wonderful, I think, premises of a book ever, and the most wonderful conclusion. This one is about a serial killer who kills people alphabetically. So she's going to kill someone whose first and last name starts with an A, in a town that starts with an A, and then move on to B, and send a letter between saying, I did that, you couldn't catch me, next. And Poirot and Hastings have got to investigate that. The solution is brilliant. The points of view switch is absolutely brilliant as well. I couldn't find the solution. I remembered the solution, but I couldn't find it again in the way that Poirot finds it. It's got hilarious banter, and I just wrote down, actually, one of them because I thought it was just so good. Oh, actually, it's on my iPad, sorry. But there was an exchange between Poirot and Hastings, which is so good that I wrote it down. This is over here. She really is a lovely girl, Hastings said, and wears very lovely clothes, that crepe maroquin and the silver fox collar, dernier cri. You're a man milliner, Poirot. I never notice what people have on. You should join a nudist colony. Which I think is hilarious. Honestly, they're so good. I loved the ABC Murder, and it's just so, it's got the right tension, it's got the right plot. I think it's just riveting. The idea of a serial killer who goes alphabetically is just so riveting to me, and not in a bad way, I hope, but yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, again, just relationship between Hastings and Poirot, and just Poirot, absolutely wonderful, so refreshing. I know a lot of people prefer Miss Marple. I love her as a character, but sometimes just Poirot and Hastings just work so well, and the banter and the humour of these books I can't find anywhere else. I just love them for that. And finally, my last book of the month was The Blue Castle by Lucy Montgomery. This was a reread, and it's one of those perfect books. I know that everybody and their mother is talking about The Blue Castle because it's a perfect book, but it's just so wonderful, honestly. It's so wonderful. It's a Cinderella story, and I personally just identify so much with Valency. And yeah, absolutely wonderful. Valency Sterling is a spinster. She's 29 years old and she's abused by her family constantly. Her family is horrible. This is so funny. This is so funny. Again, funny and cruel, so maybe that's a British trait indeed. But she's abused by her family, and one day she's been given the news that she has got not very long to live, and she decides to throw caution to the wind and just be purely herself and talk back and just leave them and live her own life. And this has got the most absolutely wonderful romance of all time, and absolutely maybe the best proposal scene I've ever read, and just gorgeous stuff. She's also in love with this writer called John Foster who brings nature really to life in his writing, and she's the most wonderful character. I adore her. I love a heroine who is headstrong, stubborn, plucky, and who just reveals herself through the course of the book. It's very much a coming of age story, even though she's 29, and this is perfect, honestly, and the romance is perfect, and the evolution of the heroine is perfect, and this is so damn funny. This is incredible, honestly. I love this book so much. I just wanted to read you just a few passages from the book. There was a very long quote of nature writing which I loved so much. Simple joys as well. Okay, so let's start with nature. The woods are so human, wrote John Foster, that to know them one must live with them. An occasional saunter through them, keeping to the well-trodden path, will never admit us to their intimacy. If we wish to be friends, we must seek them out and win them by frequent, reverent visits at all hours, by morning, by noon, and by night, and at all seasons, in spring, summer, in autumn, in winter. Otherwise, we can never really know them, and any pretense we may make of the country will never impose on them. They have their own effective way of keeping aliens at a distance and shutting their hearts to mere casual sightseers. It is of no use to seek the woods from any motive except sheer love of them. They will find us out at once and hide all their sweet, old-world secrets from us. But if they know we come to them because we love them, they will be very kind to us and give us such treasures of beauty and delight as are not bought or sold in any marketplace. Love that so much. Simple joys. A plate of apples, an open fire, and a jolly good book whereon to look are a fair substitute for heaven. Anyone can have the streets of gold. There are scenes which are a bit spoilery, so I'm not going to just talk about them, but the romance is indeed very beautiful, and you see the couple really bond and have lovely times together, and scenes which you sigh over and marvel at. Absolutely gorgeous. And just for the humour part, I just wanted to have this quote in my video. Dos, which is how her family calls Valency, they completely negate her name. Dos, I really do not understand you. Do you want to catch your death of cold again? Her voice implied that Valency had died of a cold several times already. Yeah, so that's it for me for January. That was a wonderful, rich month. I didn't read only books which I absolutely loved. It was very heavy. Again, it was very dark read for me, a bit. I'm looking forward to reading more light books which are more in my style and my lane in February and beyond. But yeah, I felt that I really made a point of again trying to find the best in each book that I read, no matter the star rating. So even a 3-star book, I tried to find the best in it for me and what I could enrich myself with from it. So I think I did a good job of that, and I would like to again focus more on light, playful books moving on. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Have a wonderful Sunday. Bye.